We are, there we are. We have Mike Myatt, our chairman, in our live broadcast today, Shaina and Roo. So the topic we're going to discuss today is next level talent. And the question really is, what is next level talent? What would be the indicators of next level talent? How would you go and find next level talent to propel your organization? I would just like to open the floor, and Mike, maybe you want to kick off with your first ideas on this topic.
Sure. I think, when you look at talent, I think everybody has innate talent, right? Everybody has whatever their areas of natural giftedness are. But I think it's what you do with what you have that makes the difference. So how do you unlock that next level of talent in an individual, in a group, in an organization? Or how do you go out and find those people that really want to contribute at that next level? And so for me, I love looking for talent. I've always loved exploring talent, and I've kind of gone to the ends of earth at times to find great talent. And so for me, this is a lot of fun because I see a lot of people that I think are trapped in functional roles, or they're doing a job, but they haven't really found their sweet spot, right? They haven't really found how to optimize or maximize their contribution to a team or an organization, or frankly, to themselves, right? So I think that's what's interesting about this discussion. I don't know. What do you think, Jaco?
Yeah, no, I like what you say, Mike. For one thing, it's different for every company. I think it depends very much on the company-specific challenges, for instance. If you look at the maturity level of a company, they're going to need different talent at every stage. It also depends on the type of business, which I'll come back to shortly. So, interesting thing is, if you look at next level talent, be it a management or senior management, the phase a company is in is quite indicative for the type of people, the type of talent that you attract. Take, for instance, a startup. So if you contrast a startup with, for instance, a company in decline, at a startup, what would great talent look like? It would be possibly a visionary. It would be somebody with a healthy doses of a risk appetite, somebody who has some perseverance in his or her character. If you look at a next level talent for a company in decline, most probably that type of talent's not going to work. You need somebody who can take unpopular decisions and who can restruct, which is again different for a mature company, where you would rather have somebody that do not rock the boat and keep things stable, no maverick. So the way you define next level talent, I would like to link this with where a company is in its developmental phase, and additionally to the type of business. To come back to one of Shaina's points in one of our earlier discussions, I think next level talent for a special forces command would look very different than the talent you would seek for a CEO in cosmetics, won't it, Shaina? You're on mute. There you are.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add to this one. It's interesting. Like, why even add the words next level? Shouldn't it just be talent and finding the right talent? Is it like one of those things that we put extra words to make it sound a little nicer? Like, how do we define it? Like, what is the ultimate goal? Because to me, it sounds like it's always about just finding the right people for the organization or for the position. And that can look very, very different from role to role, from company to company, or any desired outcome that someone is looking to achieve.
Yeah, no, good point. I think we kind of use the term just to say that we try to take guessing out of the hiring process, and it's difficult because you need to unlearn certain questions. because asking certain questions, it's almost like a proxy, getting people into your company who looks like you, talk like you, fit in the same culture, and start asking different questions. So for me, talking about next level talent is maybe just a way to depart or to differentiate the way the way we did it and always done it in the past, juxtaposed to the way that we try to do it in a new reality that we live in.
Yeah, when I hear the phrase next level talent, I'm thinking of something that is different than what we currently have.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's necessarily what Mike was talking about, because you could also take it in the sense that, like, well, I guess, yeah, it's like it could be the same person, right? But if they grow and develop to reach that next level of their talent, whatever that is referring to, it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's a different person, but it does have to mean it's a different, I guess, impact or like level. I don't know how to say it differently, but basically like improving in some way or differentiating, I guess, from how you were performing to how the company needs you to now. Or I think we think about like how the company would like to be a lot. So like when you think about the next thing, the next phase, or the way that you want to be next in terms of how you're managing talent or even what you're achieving as an organization.
Yeah, I would like to get Mike's reflection on this. I mean, Mike, you've been in this space of next talent and hiring of next talent for a really long time. When you collaborate with clients, with large companies, what are the indicators? What are you looking for to identify that talent who is really making the difference?
Hey, Jaco, I think Mike just tapped out to come back in. I think he was having audio issues.
Oh, okay. Well, it's fine. Maybe I should just pass on the question to you two, or maybe I can give my take on it. So the question really is, in this whole search process, companies trying to find the next best new hire or next talent, what would be the indicators or the criteria that you would use to identify these people?
I think it's really... Go ahead, Roo.
Because in my mind, I feel like that's a loaded question. That makes my brain go in like 3,700 different places. And I think it's going to vary from company to company. But I think it's going to come down to identifying a core value in an individual. Because as I was hearing like Shaina's answer now this question, Jaco, like somebody working hard and then they evolve into something else. Is that talent, or is that an indication of somebody's effort and hard work?
Yeah.
So I think as a company, if you can identify somebody's values and like what it makes them who they are at the core, it's probably a better indication that them being talented at any given skill. Because if somebody's core is to be a hard worker and to figure things out on their own, then they will always try to figure things out on their own, and you can leverage that as an employer.
It makes sense to me, Ro. One of the things I look at a couple of attributes, and it's not the holy grail, but I think it's a healthy mix of attributes. For instance, if I talk about me personally, I like the element of surprise when I look at candidates. People talk about the wow. That candidate that just blows you off the table with his her motivation and energy. Some people have sex appeal. I talk about candidate appeal. You just meet a candidate and you just know this is it. A healthy dose of self-critique or authenticity. Being at ease with yourself. Being able to let your guard down. And another thing I'm sensitive for is candidates who open up and show you their own personal war room. They show you your scars. I think Mike referred to this some time ago too. It just indicates them, that they've learned from the past. and they learn to apply this in a new context. I mean, this on top of things like personal drivers and resourcefulness. So, Mike, you welcome back on. So we're talking
Thanks,
about
Jaco.
So the question I had for you, you couldn't hear me, is you've been in this business of supporting clients to source the absolute best available candidates on the market, for whatever purpose, to boost their business, to lead them through a reorganization or restructuring. What are the elements, the characteristics, the indicators that you look for, and how do you use yourself in identifying these very special, talented, next level potential employees?
Yeah, I think, you all have heard me say this before, right? You don't hire a resume, you hire a human being, you hire the entirety of the human being. So I think you need to probe into all of those aspects. But, we had a comment from Thomas Madison, saying next level is kind of unlocking maybe a new dimension of somebody's leadership ability as opposed to being just better. And I think, yes, maybe, right? It might be one or the other. It might be both, because not all human beings are created equally. I mean, we see this every day, Jaco, to your point, right? Let's say that we're running a CEO search. Not every candidate, while they might all be qualified to sit in the chair of chief executive, they don't all possess the same unique ability, and maybe even more importantly, the same unique ability that's going to fit within the culture dynamic that they're about ready to enter into. So it's not only the skills that they have, the competencies that they have, the emotional intelligence, the humility, the emotional awareness, the courage to lead boldly, and the track record to do hard things with excellence, right? And so it's not just, I guess maybe to sum this up and be a little bit more articulate, I would say that skill sets and competencies are table stakes, right? Mm-hmm. They punch your ticket to entry, but that's about it. They get you a look, because at the senior executive level, everybody has gravitas, everybody has pedigree, but not everybody is the right fit. So It's all the soft skills, and it's the ability to connect at different levels, at different places, and at different times. I mean, just going back to your comment earlier, Jaco, about stage of life cycle of an organization, I like to think that a next level leader can scale with an organization because they have the right abilities. They think properly, they behave properly, they understand what's needed, so they can plug in any environment. Now, somebody that isn't a next level leader may struggle with that, right? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I like what I hear, Mike. When I talk to clients, I always say it's, because obviously everybody wants to have the best possible candidate or stack of candidates for a potential role. But I like to look at the flip side of the coin, just as you just pointed out. So I also like it to look at what that next level is not. I mean, it's not always the person with the highest intellectual capacity. It's not always the person with the highest emotional intelligence. Or with the best interpersonal skills, or the most experienced person even. But it's the relevant combination of all these attributes that makes it the best talent or the best match for a certain role.
So that makes it interesting.
Shaina,
because it's almost like putting a puzzle together and trying to find that correct piece.
That's exactly right.
And if you have to hire or bring someone into a team, and I notice a comment here referencing that it needs to be the right cultural fit. How do you identify that someone is right for your culture after speaking with them a handful of times?
Please, Mike, please go.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've talked a lot about values, right? Having value alignment, having vision alignment, kind of being aligned at the core, right? But I think culture fit is, I don't know, it's become almost a check the box exercise, right? Do they feel right? Do they feel nice? But really what you're looking for, in my opinion, isn't so much culture fit as culture add, right? It's somebody that's going to come in and stretch the culture. It's gonna elevate the culture. I mean, they're going to be a fit at that core level, right? Because that's what you're testing for. It's like, do I trust this person? Would I want to work with this person? Would I want to expose this person to my clients? Do I think they'd be a good representative of our organization? Do I want to jump in a foxhole with this person, right? And so you're really looking for somebody that you trust as a human being first and foremost. And then, how are they going to behave, right? Because ultimately, that's kind of what culture is about. It's about how an organization behaves. So if you can figure out those types of things, then you can move on to many of the other things that are just as important, if not more so. Shaina, what do you think about that?
Well, I was going to ask, just because I don't have a whole lot of experience working with clients at this point in the process, where it's like a final stage with a candidate, and some of them like want to go have a meal with that person, but then others don't. And I'm wondering, like, what is it about these like social situations that, like, what are we trying to learn, and what are we trying to suss out about a person? And is it important to be able to have a meal with somebody before you hire them or work with them? What do you guys think?
I think in a perfect world, there's never anything wrong with meeting with somebody and socializing with somebody and seeing how they behave in different environments, right? Because, I mean, you can see, like, when I'm having a meal with somebody, I mean, if it's just a social setting, I'm probably switched off and not paying as much attention as I should. But in a business setting, I'm looking at so many things, right? I'm looking at how aware are they of their surroundings? How do they treat the wait staff, as an example, right? Are they thoughtful? Do they abuse certain privileges? I mean, just how do they behave, again, as that human being? So, if you have the chance to physically meet with somebody, I mean, it's a great learning exercise. I mean, I've learned a lot about people on a golf course, right? You see people that rise to pressure, people that shrink from pressure, people that explode under pressure. And I was golfing with a guy one time. He threw his whole bag of clubs into a lake because he sculled an approach shot, right? An approach shot. I mean, that was interesting. It makes me wonder how he would react in other environments, right? So I don't know. I think any opportunity to interact is a chance to learn. But now we're in a different world, right? So you have to be more astute, right? Yeah, exactly.
Now? You don't have the social interactions, at least not in the same way that we're used to.
Yeah,
we're all adapting, and it's funny now that I like having you here, Mike, because you literally built a company where I would say probably 90% of everyone that works here, you have barely met face to face.
Yeah.
So how do you identify people to fit that puzzle without having these social interactions that are so crucial to so many leaders? And now they find themselves forced by nature to have to change that.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a nicety, right? It's a luxury. If you have the chance to meet with somebody, it's an evolved experience. But to your point, Roo, I probably haven't met 90% of our employees face to face. We've engaged like this. I mean, in my mind, this is a social interaction. We're having a social interaction right now. The people that are engaging with us by providing comments and questions, that's an interaction. So you just have to explore an individual differently, right? We're not golfing today. We're just chatting. But, you can learn a lot about somebody in a good dialogue, right? And that is kind of behavioral science. And I mean, maybe Jaco, you can speak to that probably better than anybody here.
Yeah, no, I think a very interesting, Ro, very, very good question, actually. My father always said there's many ways to skin a cat, and I guess it's also true for finding, how do you find these type of talents in the market? And if we say talent, I mean, I'm referring to management talent, to executives, senior executives. There's a couple of things I do which I find very valuable, but I mean, it works for me. It doesn't necessarily have to work for you, but I listen very carefully to referrals of outperformers. Outperformers usually surround themselves with likewise people. So the first thing I would do when talking to senior leadership about their new hires is I would look, I would turn to my network and I would speak to the outperformers, people who really understand and who are connected to the type of people that we would like to get to know. I make sure that a position specification for each is razor sharp, because that helps you in it's almost like the lens you have through which you look, and it helps you to filter potential candidates. We talked about failures. I see a lot of comments coming in about people showing their scars. I like it to talk to people about their failures. And next level candidates, believe me, they do have failures. Some of them have a lot of failures. They learn to deal with them. They improved on them. They learn to apply them to new situations. I think that Bill Gates mentioned in one of his books, one of his first books he wrote, that they had a policy at Microsoft of employing people with a history of failing, because these are they're usually not scared. They think differently. They try things. They just cross the border, and you need this interesting mix in your company to be successful. But let me just throw in an interesting statement for the group. I think we just talked about culture fit. I think that, or the hypothesis would be, anyway, to my experience, that a lot of next level candidates do not fit in the current culture of a company or even in the profile. What are your thoughts about this?
I could not agree more. I think a lot of people, look, I think it's like being in a design process, and Roo, you probably know this as well as anybody, right? How many people have you had over the years that could not tell you what they were looking for, but they could tell you what they didn't like, but all of them, right? And so I think it's really interesting when it comes to talent. I watch organizations really just struggle with trying to find the right people, because I don't think they look for them. They look for the safe people. They look for the people that aren't going to create any blowback, the people that aren't going to create any controversy, the people that are going to come in and kind of march in a straight line. And, that's how you absolutely implode as an organization, is to build around talent like that. And, Roo, you were asking me earlier, about interviewing people that you've never met. I mean, I want people that I have to go to the ends of the earth to find, right? I don't want somebody that just shows up on the doorstep because they live 5 minutes from the office, right? I want to go out to the market and find the best human being that I can find, regardless of where they are, what they look like, where they come from. It's how are they going to stretch us? How are they going to make us better? How are they going to take us to new places? And how do we make them better? And where is that fit, right? And Jaco, to your point, most organizations wouldn't even understand that level of thinking, right? There's the old mentality. Ever heard this saying, hire slow, fire fast? You've never heard that. It's been around forever. The thought is take great care and great time in who you let into the organization. And when you find somebody that doesn't fit, get rid of them in a New York second, right? That's the kind of old mentality. And a lot of people that sit in talent acquisition roles still think like that. And so I don't think you hire slow. I think you hire you hire carefully, and carefully doesn't necessarily mean slow. And that's the real trick, because there is that another old saying, that war for talent, right? I mean, if you don't find the great talent, somebody else will. So you want to move really quickly, you want to move thoughtfully, you want to move carefully, but you want to bring great talent to you, and not just run-of-the-mill talent. So in any role, right? Not all CFOs are created equal. They probably all understand treasury and capital markets and tax and audit, and they understand all the right functions of the role. But how do they create the outcomes? What kinds of teams do they build? How do they stretch the thinking within that organizational construct? How do they unlock hidden value across the enterprise? That's what we're looking for, right? And you don't get that with conventional thought. You get that by, I mean, we were kind of touching on it earlier. It's almost like a forensic exercise, right? It's really digging down, really peeling back, and then bringing somebody on. And when somebody comes on and they make a failure, you don't fire fast. You try and understand, because somebody's failure in this organization is probably my fault. I didn't set the right expectations. I wasn't clear enough in things. My team around me maybe misheard me, which is my fault. But if there's a failure in the organization, don't seek it out and destroy it. Seek it out to learn from it, get better from it, and hopefully develop the person that was involved with it, so that they have more clarity going into the next evolution, right? So I don't know. Do you guys agree with that? Disagree with that?
I would say when it comes to failure, you have to almost think about it differently, because I mean, you just said, like, if someone in our organization makes a mistake, it might be like a miscommunication from the top down. But like, sometimes we just make bad choices, or like the wrong choice in that situation, whether it's good or bad. It's kind of like ambivalent, but it was the not best choice in that moment. We can still take that as an opportunity to learn as a group. And I guess just like being able to handle failure as a group and not be so individualistic about it can make the team stronger and make it an environment where people can truly grow. Because if they're just afraid of making mistakes all the time, they're not going to be able to unlock their talent, or take these risks that we want them to take to be able to take the organization to the next level. So it's almost like fostering an environment where failure is not necessarily okay or like desired, but like when it does happen, we rally around each other, and it isn't like, oh, the new guy messed this up,
Yeah.
Look, you can't swim if you don't jump in the pool, right? I mean, if you don't get in the water, you're not going to learn to swim. And I think that's what we're all doing together, right? We're learning as an organization. We're evolving as an organization. And so we try and we test different things. And because somebody has, let's say, a bad idea, well, who's the judge of the bad idea, right? Maybe it was a great idea, but I think we have to be open to exploring the outcomes, and we don't want to fail. I mean, I think that fail fast, fail forward kind of mentality, I think it's almost air cover and permission space for being lazy in some respects. I mean, I think we have to understand failure. We have to accept failure. We should succeed fast and succeed forward, and recognize that we're going to have failures along the way, but that's just part of the path of progress. And so, it's a mindset thing. Jaco, we had a couple of questions come in.
Yeah, first I want to say, Thomas, thank you for the compliment. It's always nice that at least somebody's listening and recognizing what you say. James had a question. What do you think about creating culture with someone new versus more of the same? A really interesting question. Anybody want to pick this one up?
Oh, I can go on that one. I think that is the key to being successful, which to me, like finding the perfect piece of the puzzle is not the answer, even though that's what we strive for. And I put myself as an example in our marketing team here at N2, where our new CMO came in, he couldn't be any more different than me. I'm talking, he's a guy who's process oriented. He likes lists, he likes tasks. And I'm like the ultimate creative, which is like, don't give me a list because it'll drive me crazy and I cannot think. But I think that created an interesting dynamic where the first month it was like we couldn't like it was a bit of friction trying to figure out how to work together. But we ended up complementing each other extremely well to be able to accomplish crazy things that a team of our size probably would take at least 5 times the amount of people to accomplish, because he's focusing on the things that are completely blind spots for me, and vice versa. So I think that is the key oftentimes to creating successful teams. It's like, look at what may be the polar opposite of what we have as a team, and we need to bring someone like that just to see what happens. Even if it's an experiment, you may be shocked at what can come from it.
Although you know the expression, without friction, there is no gloss. It doesn't shine. I do think that there's 2 things I'm always very aware of, almost on behalf of the hiring party. And the one is too much focus on experience, because everybody wants a very experienced director or a very experienced executive. But what we've seen multiple times in the past is again this concept of overlearned, over-experienced people, where it kind of block that new creativeness, new problem solving, new type of interactions that we are searching for, and beware of superstars. And one of the big sins in hiring executives is hiring for the company, hiring for the team, and who doesn't want to have a superstar in their team? But we've seen again, learning by doing that, you pay more. It's not always like that, but pay more gets less. It happens a lot. What are the other things, in your opinion, where one should be wary of or aware of when trying to attract and find next level talent for an organization?
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said, Jaco, because you and I have a great relationship, because we oftentimes find ourselves on the opposite side of an opinion. But we always kind of work our way through it and get to a better place. And so, you said something that is completely contrary to my experience. I look for superstars all the time, 100% of the time. I think, the 3 faces I'm looking at on the screen are superstars, right? But I think what I'm not looking for is the egotist, the narcissist, the prima donna. I'm not looking for somebody that thinks so highly of themselves that they can operate outside of the framework of the organization or the culture construct. And how you really figure out if you've got good leadership is when you've got talent that lives outside of the values. Watch very closely what that leader does when that happens. It will tell you a lot. So what I'm looking for is the absolute superstar that's a team player. That has humility, that has a quiet confidence. And if they want to throttle it up and be a little bit edgy, that works for me too. As long as they're not nasty about it, right? So I think, I'm putting my definition on your term, Jaco, and so I'm sure we're not as far apart. In fact, I know we're not as far apart as I've articulated it, but I didn't want people listening to think that, you shouldn't go out and look for the best possible
I think it's
you can find, right?
It's an absolute great qualification, Mike, and I'm really happy that you kind of frame it in this way. To add on that, I think the context of me making that comment, and maybe I should put it different, is that past performance is not always a good indicator for future performance. And what you usually see is people try to get, they want to have that superstar with a great performance, but it's not a prerequisite. And I think that the way that you frame it, I can absolutely live with that. Actually, I like to look for superstars myself.
Well, I think Jaco on that a little bit on performance. I think it's interesting if you can get to know someone and not focus on the outcome of that performance, but what happened in the middle to whatever that accomplishment was in the past. I think that tells you a lot about a person. Like, what was the process that got them to where they were to achieve what they did, as opposed to the actual achievement.
Yeah.
I think we're also making a big assumption that like our client, whoever we're advising in this hiring process, wants someone to come in and like shake things up and take them to like a different place. But how do we maybe bring a little bit more self-awareness to these clients that we're working with who maybe aren't as open to someone who's innovative or a superstar in that sense, where like you're by working with them and talking to them, you're realizing that this is not necessarily a situation where someone can come in and like change everything up. How do you interact with that client, and how do you talk about talent in that way? Do you try to convince them that that's what they need?
I think from my perspective, it depends, right? So it depends on the role, depends on the client, depends on the life cycle of the organization, depends on the supporting cast around them, depends on the culture. But, I think there's a train of thought that people are awakening to. And you used to hear it. In fact, I still hear it all the time. I hear people say, if every company has to be a technology company. If you're not a tech company, you're gonna just vaporize, right? Every company's got to be a tech company. Yeah, maybe sort of a little bit, right? But I kind of go at it like every company needs to be a people company. Okay. We're in the people business. Every organization on the planet is in the people business, and they got to get that right before they get the tech part right, because it's the people that are going to make the tech work, right? It's the people that are going to discover the tech, integrate the tech, evolve the tech, extend the tech. And so, when we talk to organizations, it's really kind of understanding how they envision a particular position or role, right? But our job is to help expand their thinking. It's to test their theses. It's to explore things with them and take them places that maybe they haven't thought about before because they're just trying to fill a position. But questions are like, okay, let's work through all these things, but now let's take them in different directions. And almost universally, I would say 95+% of the time, clients have a couple of aha moments, right? They have those points of epiphany where they go, hey, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. Let's explore that. Bingo, now we're having the right conversations. But if we just take an outdated position spec that's probably the fifth version of copy and paste, that's actually looking out the rear view window, we can find somebody that fits that role, but we're not doing the clients a service. We're not helping them grow culturally, organizationally. We're not doing our job. Does that resonate?
Yeah, definitely. When I think of next level talent, like we all have our perspective on like what that means, but then we have to go through that exercise of figuring out what does our client think next level means, or at least how are they defining it? And then how do we challenge that if that's necessary? Sorry.
I think the fifth member of the team is awake, Shaina, as you predicted.
That's the next level talent.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting question that came in. How can we come to know a different dimension of someone in a virtual world? Which is, Roo, maybe something I would like to pass to you. We've kind of covered this question from various angles in the past. And it's a new challenge for all of us, having to identify these talents. And usually you can also use yourself as a tool by meeting and discussing with somebody in person, one-on-one. But in a virtual world, how would that work? How would we discover the great talents? Any ideas?
So for me, it's simple. Like, how comfortable are they with different means of communication? Like for me, believe it or not, I think emails is an archaic way of communicating and one of the most ineffective ways of communicating. So to see if somebody extends a hand and is willing to say, hey, let's hop on a call or a video conference, early on automatically tells me a lot about a person. But I'll be honest, oftentimes I do go in with some flags, kind of expecting someone to be faking it until they make it. Because we do live in a world that when you're in front of the camera, you are a different person than I will meet in the real world.
Yes.
And that translate into business, that translate into anything that involves a camera. So it's kind of like this interesting dynamic of me looking at you through the lens and seeing, cool, what is really you, and what are you putting on for this lens that's in front of you right now?
Well, let me give you a practical example. We're actually doing a great search now for a client in Sydney, Australia. And this is one of the first practical examples of what we're dealing with now in this new COVID-19 or post-COVID-19 situation. In general, people get a very good feeling. You use yourself as a tool. You meet somebody, you kind of get a feeling of the look and feel of a candidate. So this is going to be one of the first hires where a senior executive is going to be offered a job, having not met the board in person. So just by having virtual conversations, and maybe I've kind of propelled myself as a proxy to also meet with the candidate who happened to be in Amsterdam. But that was just more like this time as a check in the box. But the client have already made up their mind because of all the various virtual meetings they had with the candidate.
So let's get real granular on this for people that may not be in talent acquisition or may not be in the world of executive search. I think, there are things that clients expect from us, right? They want behavioral interviews, right? They want psychometric assessments. They want, different types of analytics around a candidate. They want deep dives on experience, right? They're looking to triangulate on any gaps in a human being. And, we have all those diagnostics, all those capabilities. But I think what I'm really looking for in people is, where are they going to take something, right? When you give somebody ownership of something, whether it's people, resources, whatever it is, how are they going to steward and shepherd those resources? And how are they going to multiply those, right? How are they going to amplify the impact of those resources? Are they going to be a force multiplier, right? So what I look for in this virtual world is, autonomous and asynchronous, right? I want people that can be absolutely comfortable in kind of an autonomous role where they have a lot of authority, right? I'm not going to beam in and tell them how to do their job. I'm going to articulate where I want them to go, but then they have to be creative enough and autonomous enough and gifted enough and talented enough to get there. And they may travel a much different route than I would take, right? They may go in they may bring different resources than I would assemble, but that's not my job. I'm not in the sausage making job, right? I don't need to see how the watch is made. I'm looking for the outcomes, right? And it's the asynchronous thing that Roo was talking about, right? It's like email is one medium, it's one modality of communication, but to be successful and to scale an organization and to get the organization to that next level, your talent has to think differently, right? They have to be able to work, outside of a construct. They have to be able to figure out what the construct of the moment needs to be and how that links to adjacencies to create the right outcomes. And so, that whole thing about track record is interesting, right? Because I look at track record, I want to see what people have accomplished. And that tells me something about their character and who they are. But I have no illusions that track records are 100% portable. They don't always travel well. You could be a great success one place and crash and burn someplace else, right? Because there are a lot of dynamics that factor into whatever definition of success you're using. So I think we're having a lot of fun right now, at least I am. I know most of the team is when we're engaged with clients, trying to help them envision the future, right? Because that's the glide path that they're on. That's where they're trying to grow and go. And so if we don't give them the talent that can take them there, I mean, we're not doing our job. And I don't think they're doing their job. So that's the fun part of this thing.
So if I may build on what you just said, Mike. Let's look at, for instance, I mean, in finding that next level talent and recruiting them to your company, would you do it differently for baby boomers or Gen X or millennials, or would it be the same?
So for me, I think it's really because I'm old, right? The white hair speaks for itself. It's not a dye job. I think it's really interesting for people of my generation to operate in kind of a technology-driven world, right? And so I think there's a lot of great attributes that come along with experience. But experience in a vacuum doesn't get it done, right? You have to be agile, you have to be adaptable, you have to be a lifelong learner, you have to be intellectually curious. So the experience is kind of a plus if it comes packaged and wrapped in all of those other things, right? Now you go to the other end of the spectrum and you take somebody that maybe hasn't had 30 years in the business world. Doesn't matter at all to me. What I'm looking for, do they have the energy, the drive, the ambition, the aptitude, the attitude, the curiosity? Are they people that you can build around? Are they interested in growing and contributing, right? Because it's the merging of those generations that makes things interesting, right? Because we all learn from one another, or at least we should. So when I look at somebody, if they're 79, 59, or 29, it doesn't make any difference. It's who are they as a human being? And is it a good fit? And is it a good ad? And so, I don't think, I want to see a baby boomer on camera. I want to see them interacting with technology, because if they can't, if they're not facile enough to do what needs to be done, the experience alone isn't going to save them, because what they're going to do is they're going to use that as a crutch, right? When you're not adaptable and you're not agile, you're not relevant and you're not current, what you do is you fall back on that experience as a crutch, as an excuse, and you all of a sudden become the smartest guy in the room. And you're just telling people how to do things based on your experience, and that drags a culture down. Now, if you're relevant and you're current and you're agile and you're willing to learn, and then you bring that experience alongside of that, that's pure value add. And anybody that doesn't soak that up probably needs to change the way that they're thinking about it, right? So, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
So one of the questions that someone wrote was, how important is the ability to build trust across vast personal, professional, cultural differences? And that has been in the back of my mind as I've been listening to you talk, because it's like, regardless of generation, regardless of track record, the thing that you're trying to establish with this person is whether or not you can trust them, right? And so it's like, can you trust them to achieve the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? Can you trust them to come in and engage with people in the way that you want them to? And you're trying to build this trust now in a virtual setting. And so Ehab said that with multiple virtual meetings, you could probably suss out their character, but I don't even think it takes multiple if you're able to get to the core of what you want to know, what questions you want to have answered, and then have that very open and honest communication. Sorry.
No, I think that's right, because this doesn't. So one of the things we joke about in the business is interview fatigue, right? Because we have some clients where their hiring process, it's like running a gauntlet, and there's going to be umpteen different interviews and multiple on-sites and da 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 da. And I don't know. If there's a valid reason for that, I'm all for it. But I've never seen a valid reason for it. I've seen process kind of over-rotate from being what started out as a good idea to being completely inefficient and really a waste of time and resources because it's not adding value, to your point, Shaina. I mean, I can have in one or two, if I can't get what I need out of somebody in one or two conversations, I'm not going to get it in three or four. Yeah. You know, my job is to get it fast, to test it, to validate it, to invalidate it, to kind of circle around it for perspective. But if it takes me 6 or 8 or 10, times at bat to do that, I've failed. And an organization, I think, a lot of organizations want to get a lot of buy-in. They want to get a lot of, differing opinions and perspectives. But, if you build your process so that's baked into the process and it's not individually centric, right? I don't have to interview somebody here because the people here know how I feel about things. And they're baking it into what they're doing, right? And I trust them to do that. And so if everybody in the organization has to have a say on somebody, you've got kind of a dysfunctional organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would say there's a lack of trust there, right? Between even internally. Yeah.
Let's talk about that trust thing a little bit, because I'm curious. Nobody's perfect. We've talked about failure. If we're all being honest, we've all broken trust with people in our lives, right? We've had moments where, doggone it, I wish I could have that one back. What do you do when somebody breaks trust with you? How do you deal with that person on a team?
Who's going to
depends on how bad did they break it?
I think that's right.
This is a kind of I think a question we can debate on and talk for hours. It very much depends on the person at the other side of the table. We've talked about the trust equation some time ago. That trust is authenticity times divided by risk. For me, I find it very difficult once my trust is broken. So I'm one of the executives that you don't have to earn my trust, you get it. But once that trust is being broken, it's always a painful process for me to heal. I guess that there's some people who are easier in that respect than I am. Yeah.
No, I think it's safety and security, right? It's risk, it's exposure. It's so once that trust has been broken, somebody's got to work really hard to reestablish it. But I think the other party has to kind of step back too and say, hey, look, why did this happen? Did I have anything to do with this happening? And rather than sitting in judgment of the fact that it happened, let's kind of judge ourselves, judge the environment, judge all of the factors and figure out whether or not we should be judging the person as opposed to solving a problem or developing, creating a development opportunity, right? So I think failure and breaks in trust are really difficult things for most people because they feel unsafe. They feel like they're going to get let down again. And you know what? You might. People are people, right? But I think, it's where do you draw the line? What do you allow? Because if you allow somebody to consistently break that trust time and time and time and time again, you're not doing anybody any favors. Because some people are their own worst enemies. I've been my own worst enemy at times, and sometimes it takes, a shot right to the chin to wake me up, because I can be like a rock rolling downhill when I get going. And so, you just have to be aware of who you're dealing with. I think that's the best advice that I can give in that respect.
Well, we're coming up on top of the hour. I think, Mike, that was a nice remark to conclude the discussion with. We talked about next level talent. I think we looked at it from an external perspective too. How do you attract, recruit next level talent? If you don't spot if you don't spot talent inside your own organization, somebody else will. That's why talent circle out. So I would like to conclude with this. Looking forward to our next discussion next week, Tuesday, around 5 o'clock in Europe. And I guess that would be 11 o'clock US time.
Yeah. So, hey, if people watching enjoyed this, if they found any value in it, please like us, please leave a comment. Please let other people know about this. We want to do what we can to help. So let us know if we can do anything better. Okay, Roo, I think we're all wrapped.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Till next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.